we go. Overdrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 2. Look what we have this afternoon. What a turn of events. Bryan Hayes and Jamie Noodles McLennan.
I got called in off the bench.
Off the bench for a show with your name on it, but you're coming off the bench, and I love it, and I appreciate it. It must be a big story in Toronto, or a lot going on here in town.
Well, I was going to ask you, was it a scheduled day off for you? Because usually this stuff happens when you're out of town and when when you're not available, but all of a sudden, I don't know when I think it was Dregs, maybe Monday night, there's a rumblings, there was a buzz. What was your initial reaction? Because all of a sudden we're, Wednesday afternoon, the captaincy has changed hands. I like the move. I think we're going to, talk about it here for the next 90 minutes, but I think it's the right move. I think all of that. But what was your initial reaction when it came across your desk?
I was off on Monday. I was back on Tuesday. So my initial reaction was, thankfully, it broke Monday night. And I said, that's great. Thank you, Maple Leafs. Gives us something to really cook on here for a little while as we get closer to camp. I mean, I guess what it did was put hockey and the Maple Leafs back into the forefront. And I guess you can thank the St. Louis Blues and the Oilers, on that front as well, because as you know, the first 10 days or so of July, maybe 15 days, there's still news that's kind of trickling out. Like a lot happens on July 1st, and then there are a number of signings that happen a few days later, and then you have press conferences, and you have guys, coming into town and doing different things. And I would say by around, July 12th, July 15th, it's usually dead for at least a month, if not a couple of months, until you get to the beginning of the season and training camps opening up. So from that standpoint, I mean, doing the show the last month, and I've had time off, we really haven't spoken about the NHL in any capacity. Like, I don't recall talking about any NHL stories, any hockey stories, not that you would expect to, mid-July, late July. So I wasn't bracing for it. I guess it made me remember, I think we were talking about it late June, right? Remember there were some whispers, some reports, like maybe they'd change the captaincy. Is that something they should look into? So I guess it wasn't necessarily like a shocking announcement, but it was a bit surprising in the moment. Certainly not surprising who got it. Right. We all knew it was going to be Matthews. But I will say, watching the press conference today, I was thoroughly impressed with John Tavares, which I'm not surprised by.
No, he's a class guy.
The guy he just oozes, classy professional athlete, that has a lot of time and respect for being a Maple Leaf, playing in his hometown. There's a couple of clips I want to play that we'll get to here momentarily. But I thought Tavares being up there, Tavares' his family being there, Matthews' his parents being in town, it's a moment that deserved that type of kind of pop.
Theater.
Yeah, that kind of theater, exactly. Yep. And that's kind of what was on display today.
I liked it. I guess, and it's more up for us from an opinion standpoint. Was there a perfect time to do it? Like that's the first thing that I thought about. Is like, I don't think you do it right at the end of the season. They've lost out. Emotions might be running high. Then you're like, okay, is that a knee-jerk reaction? We're taking the captaincy away. Blame it on that. But that's not the case. So I was sitting there going, is there a sweet spot for a perfect time for this, a natural transition? You could argue that it could have been last year with the new contract for Auston, right? Like, hey, we're signing an extension, where he's making a commitment to the organization. John's in the last 2 years of his deal. It's going to be a natural, we'll call it a transition of a figurehead, because John's still going to be a leader. We all know he is. He's a born leader. He's been a captain everywhere he's been. I thought it was a selfless play and him being involved in it. I think the organization, you look around, every team, the best player on the team for the most part, outside of Colorado. Now that was forced with Landeskog, right? Like Landeskog
got there first, and
right. But there are, for the most part, it's always like best player has
generally
a seat,
speaking,
right?
Adam Lowry's an example in Winnipeg where he wouldn't be the best player, but
he's a hell of a
very good player. Very good player. And a lot like Tavares in terms of his professionalism. He plays with bite, can hit, fight. There's a lot of different things. But you're right. Generally speaking, it's the McDavids, it's the Matthews, it's the Sids, Gretzky, Lemieux. Like the great players of any specific era generally are the captains of the team. Yeah,
and I thought, okay, so it's a good time right now. Yes, it is. It's perfect for us because it's a slow news cycle. But, like the season's right around the corner. Like, yeah, you're hearing buzz of guys getting back into town. Guys are working out, ramping up for the season. So I think it's the right timing. It gives everybody an opportunity to kind of soak it in and get excited for the season coming up. I did think of something, and I don't know if you thought of it. I thought of it maybe about 2 hours into absorbing it. I'm like, man, MLSE just, think
they're
of
making
this.
so much money.
They're
making
this,
so much
because
money off this.
It is not, people are not going to just take some white tape and put a C on their Matthews jersey.
Man.
This is brilliant on so many different fronts, right? Like MLSE is probably like, hey, we have no problem with this, like the people that count the money.
Yes.
It's like all new Auston Matthews jerseys, all new John Tavares.
Got to get the JT, jersey. You got to get the A on it, right? Like Brad Treliving, that was an answer I found very, very interested in that question. I don't recall who posed that question, if John would continue to wear an A, because we talked about it extensively yesterday. And O came on and thought maybe you just rip the Band-Aid off completely and not end up with him having an A on his jersey. But Treliving did not waste any time and said, yes, he will. Now, who else will wear an A? They'll figure that out. That'll be up to the Berube and Treliving and company. But, yes, you're absolutely right. And I will say, watching him unveil the captaincy, like, on the jersey, it does pop in pro sports, man.
It feels cool, man.
It's a really cool look having the C on the jersey. Especially a great sweater like the Maple Leaf sweater, like an original 6. You can't beat it.
But they are not, if you go downtown to the Maple Leaf store, they're not selling C's to iron on.
No, of course not. And they're up right now. They got to be up in the stores, right? That's actually a good question, like the trivia question. Who is the first one in Toronto who's already walking around with an official jersey? Because someone is going to put, a fake C on there, right? Or put some tape on, or, cut it off a different jersey and put it on their Matthews jersey. Someone may have already done that, or they did it as of Monday night once the news got out. But who is the first one in a city to buy a legitimate, like, team-registered Matthews jersey with a C on it?
I guarantee there's people that
probably
right
already
away,
gone. They're in line right now. It's like the new iPhone. Like, I got to get the new Matthews jersey.
Just popped it, but it is. I've like knowing. I mean, Austin's his own person. He's a very unique person. His look, his style, his personality, and that. I kind of chuckled. Like, do you remember when? Maybe this is just a Russian thing. Remember when the captaincy just had a K? It was a K.
That was in Russia. Yeah, it was a K.
Like, I thought, okay, knowing Matthews, he might have like some sort of designer, would want like a designer C or something like, and it might be a designer C on those Bieber jerseys,
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Something unique, right?
Yeah.
Like but it is, there's no, I don't know if you feel the same way. I don't think there's any downside to this. John Tavares, if you look at the life of his contract, how he's handled himself, how he's been a class citizen, how he's performed, this is a natural progression. I don't think this is, hey, we're stripping you of the C. This is what, we're pissed off. We're going to change the look of this team. I think it's natural. And the other thing I would add, Brian, is I don't know where the pressure comes, but I think Auston Matthews has to own this. This is his team. Mm-hmm. So success runs through the top players. So win or lose, there were times where it's John coming out there. This is Austin's team. If something goes right or wrong, he's going to be right in the mix. And you want your alpha, your biggest player, your superstar. He's the tip of the spear. That's Auston Matthews. So that's what comes with the C, the way I see it.
Yeah, and I think he's probably held that standing in that room for years, if not basically when he arrived. But now it makes it official. Certainly, externally, there's no hiding from anything. It's his team. The whole organization basically revolves around him. That's what comes with superstars, regardless of what the sport is. It doesn't matter what the sport is. Whoever is like the clear-cut best player, and we're talking about like organizational greatness, like in the history of the franchise, like that's what he represents. There are a number of Leaf fans who would already argue he's the greatest Leaf of all time. I don't see it that way yet because I think it's mandatory to have playoff performances. You have to have playoff success. I can't accept a franchise that's been around for 100 years and just changing or moving the goalposts because of regular season greatness or talent, or how he plays to the crowd and all that. Listen, I'm as big of an Auston Matthews fan as you're going to find ever since he arrived. I love the way he plays. Love that he's a Leaf. Love his story. And I'm pulling for him and the team to fulfill the story and finish it off. That applies to everybody. But that's on them to do it. You know, and them changing the captaincy in August is not going to have any effect on what happens in the third period against Boston in Game 7 if they get there again.
That's where I was going to ask you. They got to figure
that out on their own.
So
and they got to do it pretty quickly.
100%. That's last time we spoke, and even at the end of free agency, you and I sat there July 1st. After a couple moves by Tree, we thought they were shrewd moves, but you're looking at it, now we're mid-August. It looks like the band is coming back. It looks like there's a few tweaks here or there. Does this distract a little bit from, you can speak to it better than I can, but the buzz around the city, does this change the narrative at all, or is it this? People are like, I think it's same groups coming back.
Yeah, I think it depends on what your mentality is anyway as a Leaf fan. Like, we've talked about this for a decade now. Like the fan base is so massive that you cannot paint it with one brush. Right. There are two poles, and on one end is the eternal optimist. On the other side is the eternal pessimist, and then there's hundreds of thousands of people in between. So the pessimist, I can tell you, they're saying this is all irrelevant. It's all meaningless. Even Berube coming in, probably is not moving the radar much or moving the needle much, because the core four's back, Riley's back, the 5 players who have been here the longest, make the most money, they're all coming back, right? Everything else is window dressing for that fan. And there's a large portion of the fan base that fits there. And guess what? With every playoff failure, more and more people join that group. More and more people join that mentality. Now, that mentality, like everything else in pro sports, is fickle. If they win, it will all reverse. And everyone will say, actually, I always knew. I was always a believer. Because, being a fan, there's no checks and balances. You're a fan. You invest your time, your energy, your emotion, your money. You can think whichever way you choose if you're a fan. On the other end of it, yes, this would be absolutely something that is going to get a lot of Leaf fans buzzing. Like I saw Joe from the Bridge earlier. The guy is doing cartwheels through the hallways here at TSN, right? Because he loves Matthews. He loves the way Tavares handled this, as he should. Loves the Berube hiring. Loves Tanev coming home. Like, there's a lot of different things that you can look at here and have a variety of different views. I lean towards the pessimism because of the history. And I challenge, and we'll have Brad Trilliving join us in an hour, and I'm going to ask him outright. You've made a lot of moves here, but it sure sounds like the core 4 and Riley, the core 5, they're coming back. Take us through this, Brad. Like, explain to us why you think that is the right decision and why it's going to be different this year. Because I think that's got to be at the forefront of everything. That has to be answered. And then ultimately these players have to go out and change it. But I found it interesting. Mitch Marner was down there. Morgan Riley was down there, as they should. They're local guys, and they're supporting their guys. They're supporting Auston. They're supporting John. They're longstanding Leafs. They're coming back. They're pillars of this organization. And it was all hands on deck today, and it was a celebratory moment, like it should be. It's a big moment. You got to take your wins where you can get it. You're not playing. Right? You control the narrative down there. You control the way people are feeling and buzzing, and MLSE was all there. There were a lot of claps. I know there were a lot of people throughout the building that were down there, if not everyone at Real Sports, kind of supporting this. It's a big moment. And I think, it's exciting, the idea that Matthews can take his legacy to, or at least write a different chapter here, right? Like for 8 years, yes, putting the playoffs aside, the guy has given you everything you could possibly dream of as a fan. He's won the Hart. He scored 69 goals. He's won the Rocket every year, the Ted Lindsay. When the guy's buzzing down there, it's unlike anything I can recall in that rink. It reminds me of going to the Gardens when I was a kid, and Gilmore and Clark were doing their thing. And that's what he kind of represents to the modern Leaf fan, I think, of all ages. And now you strap the captaincy on it. It looks great. It feels right. Now you get wins, and boom, the rest is history. Then the crown is yours. It's undisputed. You're the greatest Leaf of all time. It's right in front of him. He's just got to do it with his teammates. But it was cool to see, And I thought, again, Tavares, I don't think you can handle it any better than that. Like I have all the time in the world for John Tavares to begin with. I know you do too. I think everyone does. The guy, he oozes class in the way he handles everything. I think he's done a very good job as the captain. He's handled himself very well. He's a good citizen in Toronto. He's a good local guy that loves being a Leaf and loves living here and representing that team. And you have to have appreciation for that. But let me play the clip because I found what he said at the end of this clip interesting about where he is as a player, maybe where he wants to continue to go as a Maple Leaf. This was the statement he had prepared, what he had to say when the floor was his earlier this morning, handing over the captaincy to Auston Matthews.
Before my second season in Toronto, I was given the incredible honor and responsibility of being the next captain and follow in the footsteps of 24 Leaf greats. I've cherished every second of it. I've never taken it for granted, and I've given the captaincy everything I have every single day. It has meant the world to my family and I. Over the last few months, through deep discussions and thoughts with Brad, Brendan, and myself, we've come to the decision that now is the time to pass on the captaincy to Auston. When I decided to come to Toronto, it was all about the great opportunity to win because of the young, talented, developing core, the strength and stability of the club, and the club's belief in me to come play a significant role in its journey to compete and win the Stanley Cup. My feelings and belief in all that haven't changed, but I do recognize the development of our young core and where they are today, specifically Auston. This decision is definitely not about whether I've succeeded or failed, whether I'm capable or that my time has passed. I feel stronger than ever in my ability to compete, play at a high level, and make significant contributions through my leadership. This decision is a recognition of the maturation of a person who has shown a skill set that is special, unique, and who has a relentless drive to win.
So, again, a really classy statement by Tavares, but I found that interesting, Noodles, where he made sure to talk about his own abilities within that statement, which he had all the right in the world to do. Sure, it's a tough transition. He's obviously been along for the ride. He's spoken with Tree Living. He's spoken with Shanahan. I don't believe he was the one proactively saying, I've had enough, give it to Auston. I could be wrong, but I think this was Tree Living saying this is where we're going to go. And John obviously was like, let's do this and let's figure out how we can make it work. But him talking about his abilities and how he's still ready to compete and win here, et cetera, I found that pretty interesting considering he's got a year left on his deal.
I 100% agree, and I'll go a step further. He wanted everybody to know he's not this old warhorse that they're going to be playing 9 minutes a night and people are going to be bitching about his contract. What he's saying is I'm doing this because I want to win a Stanley Cup here, and I think it's the right time to pass this off to our stud player. But make no mistake, I'm paraphrasing, but make no mistake, this isn't because I don't believe in what I can bring to the table. Mm-hmm. I thought it was a strong statement by him saying, telling the fan base, this is the right thing to do, but you haven't seen the last of me. That's kind of I kind of got that push from him going, we did this and this is the right thing from a personal standpoint and from an organizational standpoint. But if he didn't say those things, you could kind of get in the back of your mind going, he's 33, 34, maybe he loses a step. That's not the case. He actually wanted to reassure everybody going, this isn't why this is going down because I feel I've eroded as a player or anything like that. It's going down because it's the right move for the organization, for the pathway they want to head. And he wants to be a part of it. And the natural progression is, I said this at the start of the show, it could have been natural. He might have done that a year ago when Auston signed his extension and made the commitment to the organization. But I think John understands the lay of the land. He's got a year left on his deal. Who knows what the future holds for John Tavares. But the bottom line is a guy that doesn't want to stand in the way of Auston Matthews' legacy, but also letting everyone know I'm still here to contribute. I'm not I'm not going to be your fourth line guy. And the only actually other kind of thing that I can point to, I was in Calgary and Craig Conroy gave the captaincy to Jerome McGinley. That was a natural progression. And he was this young star. Connie was the captain. It happens. It's happened in other organizations. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. It doesn't have to be a slight on the player that gives it up. It's more about the player receiving it and what he does with it. So I kind of, compare. Now, Conroy wasn't Tavares, different players, all that type of stuff. But Craig Conroy didn't lose an ounce of respect in that dressing room. He was still a hell of a captain, even if he had a C or not. It's just that it was Jerome's time to push through, and he had pushed through. So same thing with Auston here.
Yeah, and I think, what you said there is important, and it's on the Leafs to make sure that this is a positive thing. And that means that's where Craig Berube comes into play and everyone that shows up from day one. For Matthews' sake, for Tavares' sake, get off to a good start. Don't start the season, 3-6-2 and lose to Columbus and Chicago in back-to-back games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they've had a tendency of doing that in the past, and they've gotten up off the mat, and it's all good by the end of the year. Do yourself a favor and start on time and have a good start to the season so that none of that comes up or has to come up.
We heard rumbling. I mean, last summer it was well documented. McDavid, Draisaitl in there 2 weeks early.
That's true, and look how that worked out.
And Jay Woodcroft gets the game. Remember, Jay Woodcroft's walking across the ice in San Jose, and he says to Dave Manson, you could see him mouth go, that looks like it's it. You don't know. You're right. Everything gets solved with wins. And, some people will say, wake me up in April. We know what this group's capable of. They put the 100 points up. They have the regular season. It's ups, downs. It's all sorts of all over the place. But, if you think about it, the one thing outside of what we just talked about, the captaincy change, I will say Craig Berube's impact is going to be very interesting for me. Now, I played with Craig. I'm biased. I love him. Everybody you talked to in St. Louis when they had success, he was the breath of fresh air they needed. Accountability, straight shooter. It'll be interesting to see because this is, the big market. How's he going to handle talking every day, talking twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, morning skate before the game, after the game? There's going to be some times where boy, Craig wasn't happy there, straight shooter. But his impact on this organization, I think, is very critical here, too. You get a little tweak here with the captaincy, but it's also, I think, the coach.
Coach is a bigger change.
It's going to be
in terms of how the team's going to potentially play. I mean, Matthews, with or without the C, is playing more than anybody, expected to be who he is. Tavares, with or without the C, A on his jersey, still has to produce and play a lot of minutes. And it's Berube that's, got to tie it all together for sure. But with Tavares, and this is going to be in a conversation all year, what happens with his future in Toronto? Where does his legacy still go from here? Because this is now a part of it. He was the captain for 5 years, and now there's a transitional period. And the playoff history is what it is. And, his salary cap hit is something that always comes up because it's $11 million. But you look at his numbers, he plays pretty much every night. Last year, he had 29 goals and 65 points. Is that worth $11 million a year? Maybe not. Doesn't mean it's worth 2 or 3. He's still a good player and he has to continue to contribute. He'll be 34 to start the year, but this also may be a move from his perspective. Okay, I will do this with you. We're all going to be in cahoots here. Kumbaya, love it. I'm still a part of this, but I want to be a part of it in the future. And I'm sure he's told them that. I'm sure that's something that they're aware of. And it's on Tree Living, Shanahan, Pelly, and MLSE to figure out what they're going to do with Tavares in the future. But this captaincy transition did not come with a contract extension that we're aware of, nor do I think it should. But I think John Tavares should have the right, as a captain, as a leader, as a well-respected guy within the organization, have these conversations and then separately have a conversation with Tree Living over the summer saying, where are we at? I don't think that's uncalled for. And I would assume that he asked him outright at some point, if not him, his representative, what's going on here in the future, because I want to know. And I don't know if they give him that answer, but I think he has all the right in the world to ask what his standing is within the organization. He
does, but I would be shocked if the answer is you're a lifetime Leaf and we're going to make it work. I think it's let's see how this year unfolds. I'm going another way with this, Brian. I think John Tavares, with the C off his jersey, not talking every day, he's going to focus on his game. And he's going to try and follow up that, what did you say, 29, 65?
29 goals, 65 points last year.
So his goal is 65 or more. That's in the last year of a 7-year deal. It's been a value contract. Sorry, not a value contract. He has lived up to it for the most part, almost a point a game. Mm-hmm. That's impressive because I think there was a lot of us that said, give us 4 years. The back 3 years might be, a little hairy or whatever. That hasn't been the case. So to me, this might be, you might even see a more motivated John Tavares where it's you've got one less responsibility as a player, and it's a big responsibility talking every day, answering for everybody, instead of just focusing on his game. So this might be a win-win on all different levels. But as far as a contract, if I was Tree in a candid moment, say, you know what, I love your passion, I love that you want to be here, but we're going to see how this all unfolds. So just keep in mind, you are 34. And, we do have to see what the future looks like 6 months from now, heading into the trade deadline, after the playoffs, all of that type of stuff, and see how it unfolds. But I would not commit anything to anybody right now just based on where they're at.
I think you're right. I think you should be right. I hope you're right. I think that should be the course of action, with all due respect to Tavares, Marner, whoever it is. Why you would feel any sense of obligation to do anything at this point, if you're the Maple Leafs, is something I couldn't quite understand. Yet, it is going to be a storyline throughout the year that Tavares is up, Marner's up, they're both back. Mitch was down there. He did a scrum, didn't talk much, kind of spoke more about John and Auston, said, he loves being a Leaf, reiterated that fact, and then they kind of broke off the scrum and moved on. But, Marner's day will come, Tavares' day will come the camp, first day of camp, asking them, where are we at? Where do you think this is going? And how do you think it's going to play out? It's not going to be a daily conversation. Yet, it has been in the past with these guys in Toronto. And, depending on how the team plays and how they play, I guess it's kind of difficult to predict what the tone and narrative will be.
Brian, my prediction. I've said this. I'm going to be consistent with my narrative. Mitch Marner is going to get 30 points in his first 12 and a half games.
Leading the league in points.
What's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then everyone's going to be yelling and screaming, give him the farm. You know how it is.
I hear you.
It happened with Willie this year.
Yeah.
Willie couldn't stop scoring, couldn't stop getting points, and it's like the meter's running. You know how this story goes, especially regular season. Like it just, how this story goes. I mean, Mitch is a great player, and he's had a relatively long summer to train and be focused for this season. Yep. So I expect Mitch Marner's best next year.
I think you're right, and I think that'd be great, and I hope that happens for him and for the Leafs.
And before we go to break, I also need to take credit. I don't know if you remember, July 1st, I was sitting, I think, with Marty Biron, and I was sitting with Frankie Corrado. I said, if I'm somebody, I offer Sheet Dylan Holloway.
Yes, I remember you saying that. And there you go. Dylan Holloway. Did you say Philip Broberg, too? I don't remember you saying Broberg. I did not say Philip Broberg.
I did not say that, but I did say Dylan Holloway.
Yeah.
And I've got to, I'm telling you, we'll get into it.
Okay, let's come back and get into it. You got more takes on that. Edmonton now has 6 days. The clock is ticking here. They have 6 days now to figure out if they're going to match those offer sheets. If not, those two players are on the way to St. Louis. It was a really unique scenario. You don't see it much in the NHL, especially the way it played out. 2 players, 2 different agents, 1 team, in terms of St. Louis. And Edmonton, I guess, for that matter. So more on that. Mark Masters coming up. Brad Treliving in half an hour. Brad will join us just after 5 o'clock. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. Overdrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Best bet still to come. Jays Angels tonight. Jays with a win last night. George Springer going out with a bang, man. Listen, we talked about it yesterday, Noodles. Like, the white flag's up from the front office. Season's done. You're not making the playoffs, but you can't have guys just mail it in. You got to get pissed off every once in a while. And Springer was
did
justified.
Touch his right foot.
Absolutely.
I thought it touched his right foot.
Absolutely.
But I mean, I don't know what you have to say to get kicked out. I have an idea, but it kind of was a late kick out. Like, he was like, all right, challenge this. What was it? Top step Tony, we used to call La Russa.
Tony La Russa used to get out there.
Schneider came out pretty quick. I liked how Vladdy jumped in there. Like, I thought that was a pretty, Vladdy jumped in and was trying to be a good teammate.
Yes.
If holding me back, not holding me back, but doing enough to just, give him a space, allow him to yell and scream, and then walk him out.
Yep.
I liked what Vladdy did there, but I wasn't watching it live, but I happened to be, watch it and then go back, and it just... I thought it was a bad call.
Oh, it was a horrible call.
I don't know how they missed it on review.
Well,
that's the thing.
And I guess once you throw the guy out, then it's like you got to stick to your guns at that point.
You got to call him out of the shower.
You got to stick to your guns at that point. But I think Springer was justified in being pissed off. He seemed to be basically just trying to express, why would I lie to you? I've been in the league for a long time. It hit my foot. I'm not walking up the first baseline to show you up. That's when umpires are so sensitive to that you're showing me up and you're trying to make me look stupid. And I think George was just trying to express that. And once he got tossed or the ump started yelling at him, then he started going nuts because he's like, who do you think you're talking to here?
Yeah, exactly.
Been in this league a long time, won a World Series. Give me a break here. And he didn't. All right, Brad Trill living in about a half an hour down at Real Sports today. The passing of the baton or the captaincy took place. John Tavares was there, and Auston Matthews and Brad Treliving and Shanahan and Craig Berube, Morgan Riley, Mitch Marner. So was Mark Masters. Here's our TSN Maple Leaf reporter. What was it like being down there, Mark? Set the scene for us. Were a lot of people? It seemed like a lot of energy. Half MLSE was in the building. That's what it looked like over TV anyways.
Yeah, it felt like an event, right? Like everyone who's anyone involved with MLSE or the Maple Leafs was there. Keith Pelly, Larry Tannenbaum, everyone was there. They had staffers up a level overseeing it, clapping and applauding when everything was happening. And so it felt like a big event. And I guess, it is 26th captain. It doesn't happen very often. So I covered the night that Tavares became captain. They didn't tell us beforehand. It was a big reveal with the home opener, and they were going to skate out, and we were going to find out. And I remember in the morning, we were all asking the players, like, do you know who, trying to suss it out. And so I haven't been a part of an event like this where it's a news conference format. I understand they did the Dion Phaneuf announcement also at Real Sports. So some people were talking and thinking back to that, but it doesn't happen very often. And it did feel like an event down there.
Let me ask you before we get into the hard-hitting questions, were you wearing a suit with shorts, or what was the dress code? Because there was some, I caught a glimpse of some people, it looked very casual, and then there was other people with suits. What were you doing?
I was in a full suit. I've never gone with the suit with shorts. I know John Lewis kind of popularized that in the TSN community, but I've never... I tend to get cold. I don't know. So I was maybe overdressed, but there was an eclectic mix of outfits. I mean, it's the middle of the summer, so I feel like anything kind of goes. But Chris Johnston was there in a suit as well. He didn't have the tie on until we did our hit for SportsCenter, but it was an interesting mix. But everything, nothing feels out of place in the middle of the summer, right?
No,
it's just you get a pass, right?
No, some media members dress like homeless people anyway, so I don't think they would be putting on a suit August 15th or whatever it is today. So it looked like, obviously you just mentioned, and I'm joking about it, Masters, but it looked like a celebratory event. It looked to me like everybody was on the same page. I love that JT's, family was there, Austin's family. Everybody said and did the right thing. And did you get that mix? Did you get that feeling from being in the room there?
For sure. I mean, it had the opportunity to be awkward. It felt like going in, we didn't know, how it was going to work. Was Tavares going to be on the stage? Was he going to speak? What was going to happen? I thought it was really nice that he had his kids were there in the front row, and his two sons were wearing Auston Matthews sweaters with the C on it. And I guess they love jerseys. And actually, Tavares had wanted this. He said, put it on and we'll get Austin to sign it, and it'll be a great addition to your collection. So I thought that was a really nice touch by John Tavares, who handled everything really, really well, right? That was kind of the big question coming in, was how would John Tavares handle it? You felt like it could not be easy, knowing how much it meant to him. He said he cherished every moment, but then to pass this along, it's tough. And he made the point in his prepared remarks, he had a piece of paper there. He really wanted to make sure he got it right on a day like this, that he didn't feel like this was about his success or failure, but just the timing of it. The way he handled it made it seem like more seamless than awkward for sure. And I was talking to Chris Johnston. I was wondering, is this going to go down as one of his great moments, his last moments as captain, some of his best? Because if Matthews does evolve and become the leader they believe he's going to continue to grow into, and they do have the goal, they do achieve the goal they want to with the Stanley Cup, Tavares will have helped to make it happen. So very selfless by him, and felt very seamless down there today.
What did you make of Mitch Marner and Morgan Riley being there? And Mitch, I guess, did a scrum with the media.
Yeah.
I was a bit surprised to hear that.
Right, because we haven't heard much from him, obviously. He had his big charity event, which the media, TSN, I know I was told, he didn't want to talk about his situation and the team, and so don't come, which was fine, and let the local media talk to him about the charitable event. So we haven't really had a chance to, in a more professional setting, where it's more hockey related focus, to talk to him about everything that's happened. It's been a pretty, obviously there hasn't been the big changes that maybe some people wanted, but they've changed the coach and they've brought in some new players, of course, and he's been eligible to sign an extension for a while now. So yeah, he wanted to be there to support the two guys, Tavares and Matthews, and he handled the question about his future, I think, as well as he could have, by just simply saying, obviously reiterating he wants to be here, but it's not the time or place to talk about it. So I thought he handled everything fine. He didn't seem, tense or anything. He seemed pretty comfortable in the situation, and we'll see. He's scheduled to appear at Hockey Night in Brampton next week, another charitable event that he's involved with. He's one of the captains of the team, him and Max Domi, so we'll see if he does another media availability there, and if he says anything more. But I thought, his presence there was important. He's a guy who wore an area. I'll be curious to see how the alternate captains work next season. Remember, him and Auston switch. They rotate game to game. Riley has a permanent A, and Tavares was the permanent C. So Tavares, we know today, Trey Living's saying he's going to wear an A next season. How everything else shakes out with the alternate captain group. But I thought Marner, it was important to be there, and he handled everything really well today.
Mark, I was talking with Bryan in the previous segment about the pulse of Leaf Nation and the reaction to this. You talk to a lot of people around here. You have a good pulse on people in the game, out of the game, fan base, all of that. What do you make of this? Do you feel like this is the right time? Is this window dressing? Are people pessimist, optimistic? Where do you fall on this?
I mean, it's impossible to know exactly what's like that sort of question. Like, what does this mean? How does this really help the team get better or get closer to winning a Stanley Cup? That sort of question was asked a lot today, and it's impossible to know, right? Like, I think that this has been Austin's team for a while. Like, he's the best player. When the chips are down, you're kind of looking to him to set the tone a little bit. And I was kind of, struck. Just even the first question of the news conference today was kind of directed to both John and Austin to answer, and Austin deferred still to John to answer the question. And when Trey Living was talking about what he saw from Austin to make him think he was ready for the C, he was talking about him being the most prepared athlete he's ever seen, which is something he easily probably could have said about John Tavares too. He's known for his preparation and all that. So it's hard. Like, how is it going to help them? Really, what happened is now Auston Matthews empowered to speak up at a key moment where maybe in that same situation Tavares wouldn't or would say it differently. We don't know. So I think how you feel about the team and whether you believe in these guys as a core four group moving forward is probably shapes how you feel about this move. If you see it as a selfless move that will empower Austin and Tavares handling it well, then you think it could be a step forward. If you think that this core group has shown what they are already, when the chips are down, then you probably think it's just window dressing and it's just rearranging the decks on the Titanic, so to speak. So that's what makes it a fascinating move, is you can kind of build a case for both sides.
Great catching up with you, Mark. We'll do it again real soon. Camp's opening up in a few weeks. Thank you for this.
I can't believe the summer's almost over.
Yeah. Crazy.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Mark. This is Mark Masters. Yeah, August 14th, man. It's in the FedEx Cup playoffs. You get the U.S. Open starting up, in a week or two? The X, we're playing commercials for the X, all the time. That's when you know, man.
Is that what next week it starts? Oh, my God.
Yeah, the CNE wraps up for Labor Day. It's the last 3 weekends.
We got to dig into what is going to be the weirdest, treat there, right?
Yeah, they have a different food theme every year, usually.
I
don't know any idea what they're doing this year? I feel like, JP, you on that? I feel like JP's our CNE guy. You feel like a guy, do you love the X, JP? You just scream the X to me.
I've visited a few times, especially in working with the Argos in the summer.
Yeah, which is cool because usually if you get an Argos ticket, you also get a free ticket into the X, right? Exactly. A lot of times they set that up. It's actually a great idea. Go down and see the Argos.
Last year. We did that. We went X and then into the Argo game.
Yeah,
but not without buying a deep fried Twix or Mars bar or something, which was just
they love deep frying stuff. It's so disgusting. It's so unhealthy.
I swear, I correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like there was something weird where it was like shrimp flavored ice cream or something gross and disgusting.
They had mustard and ketchup flavored ice cream one year. I remember that.
Nonsense.
Like, why would you ever buy that? Like, what's the point of even testing that out? You know what I'm saying? Like, how is there a market for that? That's the experience. You have to go and get yourself physically ill at the X.
Yeah.
Come on down to the X and get violently ill. Like, how is that a part of the jingle now?
I don't know, but that is just, I think that's people going, like, it's almost like a dare. Like, I tried it. Like, instead of just going up and saying, hey, because deep fried Mars bars and Twix and all that, I'll eat them. Of course. We
give
all
that a
will.
shot.
The donuts and the.
Sure.
But, like, they kind of go hand in hand. Like, they're in the same family, not the other stuff. That's just weird. And I don't like it, but there are people that go, yeah, I went down and had a cone, and it was, shrimp flavored. Like, that's disgusting.
Yeah, I think they had bacon flavored ice cream.
That's like bacon
and
flavored.
They do have great food down there generally. Like, the food trucks and stuff that they set up is very good. And the X is cool. Like, I haven't been in a few years. I used to go all the time as a kid, and it's a great part of the history of the city that when it's coming the last 3 weeks. It wraps up Labor Day, then you're into school. And, the weather's already starting to turn it's still hot. Like, it's incredibly warm, but you can see the sun's going down a lot earlier already.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it's getting darker a lot earlier. Yeah. And that means, again, hockey's in the air. The NFL's right around the corner. Baseball playoffs will be ramping up in a month and a half, and the stretch run to see who's going to make the playoffs in Major League Baseball.
Well, the Jays aren't, I'll tell you.
Certainly will not be the Jays. Yeah, the Jays are not in contention for that.
Okay, so I went away for like 2 weeks, 16 days or whatever it was. And I came back and I was like, who the hell is this team? Like, I was having a problem.
Their lineup daily is tough to track.
I don't know who it is. Like, you're like, okay, I've never seen that guy before. Oh, that's interesting. That guy's playing there. And like, it's just, I went to a Jays game last Wednesday. It was Baltimore. Mm-hmm. Good game. I mean, Baltimore ended up winning. I think it was like 7-3. It was a big score. But it was a good game there for a while. And then Vladdy had the streak, so that was something
that
cool.
Was
you could
captivating.
Tune into.
They got Will Wagner, who's been at it, 2 for 4 last night, hit a double in his first at bat last night. That's a cool story. But you're right. Like, if you left town for a while and came back, you're like, okay, Spencer Horwitz, Will Wagner, Leo Jimenez, Joey Luperfido. Like, who are these guys?
You're like, okay.
Even Ernie Clement, who's been with them all year, is not an everyday ball player that, people that are kind of in and out with the team would really be that familiar with. Brian Servan's behind the plate. It's a really,
you wonder why
it's a mishmash, man.
You wonder why Springer had a meltdown, because he's probably looking around the dugout going, all right, I've had enough. Like,
right.
I can't, seeing some of these guys staring at me, I don't even know who the hell they are. Like, it just
like last night they stacked, the top of the lineup with their vets. Springer's hitting leadoff, Varsho was hitting second, Vladdy was third. And then after that, it's a bunch of guys who I don't know if they'll be playing for them next year.
Right.
From Horowitz to Clement to Wagner to Jimenez, like down the list, I would guess 1 or 2 of them will certainly be on the team. Maybe 1 of the 2 of them are in the starting, opening day lineup, possibly. Right. But it's also possible they're not. Like, literally,
let's hope they aren't.
66% of the roster may not be playing opening day.
This is a team that knows they're not making the playoffs. They sold off some players, got some young guys up, but they got to retool or reset or do whatever they have. They need a big offseason. And I don't know. This is a conversation in September when we're all back and yelling and screaming and stuff. But I'm like, there's some heads have to roll here, do they not? Like,
I don't think it's going to happen, man. I don't think it's going to happen. I get the impression like it's – I could be wrong, and maybe ownership steps in. Maybe the marketing department goes, listen, if we want to sell something, you got it. You have to throw the mob something here, because there's so much apathy and so much disappointment, and so many people are bent out of shape with how this has played out. But Shapiro spoke a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and he seemed to indicate the importance of consistency – and continuity within the organization, which would suggest to me the Shapiro, Atkins, Schneider, triumvirate will stick around. And if that's the case, then, how is it any different than the Leafs? Again, like the core 4 is coming back. They'll be out skating out opening night. Yeah. That's what's going to happen. We can talk about it all we want, but the reality within the building is quite often different. All right, Brad Treliving in about 15 minutes. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Brad Treliving in about 10 minutes. Got some Aaron Rodgers audio and video from earlier this week at Jets camp, where he compared his trip to Egypt to another trip that he's taken in the past. I found the comparison pretty funny. Yet, as someone that's experienced one of those trips, I think I know where he's coming from. J.J. McCarthy, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. He had meniscus surgery today, and they weren't sure if he was going to repair it or if they were just basically going to snip it, or cut it off.
Yeah.
And if you cut it off, you can get back into playing, within a couple of weeks. But if you repair it, it's a really long rehab. It's better for you long term. Minnesota ended up choosing, or his surgeon, I guess, decided to repair it. So J.J. McCarthy is done for the year in Minnesota. I saw someone tweet out that this is the first time a quarterback drafted in the first round in the common draft era since 1967 will miss his entire rookie season due to injury. Which is why, obviously there have been injuries during the rookie season, but usually it's, week 2, week 5, week 10, week 12. This guy's not even going to get to play at all.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and they traded up to get him, and he had a great career at Michigan. It sucks for Minnesota, man.
I know, but you start like that, man. Like, that's tough to...
Really tough.
Because somebody else is going in your job next year. Yeah. Then, if they end up having a good run, who knows, right?
That's what's scary about that job in pro sports. Like injuries, obviously the team's committed to you, but you're already going to miss a full year. Who knows what's going to happen this season in Minnesota? Who knows how you look next year, right?
Yeah,
are you a rookie next year technically or not? Like, how does the contract work? How quickly do you have to prove who you are next year? What if there's a new coach, GM? What if everyone gets blown out? It's all on the table, and it sucks for McCarthy. And again, for the Vikings fans who are hoping he could keep up with what maybe Caleb Williams will be for the Bears, what Jordan Love is going to be for the Packers, Jared Goff in Detroit. Like, all of a sudden, there's pretty good quarterback play in the NFC North again, and Minnesota's chasing it. All right, hour 2 coming up. Little Jerry emailing some takes in midsummer.
Wow,
we love that. And
Love
Brad Treliving coming up in the next hour. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.